Shabbat Shalom. We wish Hatzlacha, success to Scott and to Wendy on this bittersweet moment, saying goodbye. Mazel tov to Dan and Ellen as they celebrate, and a big mazel tov to the Almer and Green families on this wonderful Shabbat as we celebrate Rachel's becoming a bat mitzvah. And I want to say Baruch haba to my colleague, Rabbi Darby Lee from Concord. So nice to have you here. And nice to have your leadership in this work, unfortunately, that we have to do against anti-Semitism, which I understand has cropped up in Concord Carlisle schools and among many other places. Also, thank you to Tal Rotman, who's been working on that as well, and our own Lexington United Against Anti-Semitism. So I'll start with a running question. The question's not running, but it's about running. So who here has ever run a marathon? There we go. Got a few in the back. All right. How's this side doing? No, okay. How's about more than one marathon? All right. There we go. There we go. 5? Guys are going to go head to head here. 6? I'm going to stop there because he is the bat mitzvah's dad, so we're just going to go with 6. And I knew he had done 6. One of my favorite marathon stories is from the 1980 Boston Marathon, where a woman named Rosie Ruiz stunned the world by finishing first among all the women. She had an incredible time. The crowd cheered her on. She put on her laurel crown and wore her medal proudly. Then the questions started to come up. The rumors. No one had actually seen her running along the course. Eventually it came out that she had kind of slipped out at the beginning of the race and jumped back in just a mile from the finish. Rosie Ruiz had not truly run the marathon. She had ridden it. Her medal was stripped, of course, and her name became a byword for cheating, especially in our area. Now let me tell you about a different kind of journey. This was not a run, but a walk, starting in Lexington this past Monday on Labor Day. Hundreds gathered for our Interfaith Prayers for Liberty March. Jews, Christians, Muslims, people of all different faiths and of no faith, neighbors of all backgrounds came together to sound the alarm to the threats to our democracy, especially the undermining of due process, the rule of law, justice, and our shared norms. Our singing was quite spirited. Our banners and posters flew high. The sense of hope was really palpable. And I was there trying to help lead the march, full of conviction, until I got left behind. But luckily, I spotted our SAG support wagon, driven by Becky Levy. Thank you again. And so I happily hopped in. And then I had her drive all the way in front of the group. And she stopped like 5 blocks in front. And then I got out. And like Rosie Ruiz, I took a little bit of a ride. Now, do me a favor. Don't tell any of my clergy colleagues. Because they don't know. But of course, my ride wasn't really undermining our cause. I wasn't claiming some kind of false glory. I was just trying to catch up, trying to be part of our shared experience that day. And of course, I do appreciate the help. But just for the record, I still got over 36,000 steps in that day, so. 3 months ago, we held our first event with Prayers for Liberty, a reverse Paul Revere walk from Lexington all the way back to Boston. And this was our second one. We had held other prayer gatherings over the summer. I shared with you then Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel's great teaching that when he marched in Selma for civil rights, he felt that his feet were praying. Walking 12 miles for a cause is kind of a religious experience. Our Prayers for Liberty mission statement says, quote, "We walk to bear witness to the highest ideals of this nation, liberty, justice, and equality, and to remind ourselves and all of our leaders that freedom has to be nurtured, guarded, and shared." Things that we may have taken for granted, I know I took for granted, we have to remind ourselves should not be taken for granted. Now, walking is it's a great activity. We know from science you should walk after you have surgery. Walking is a way of healing. Walking's been central in our tradition. We walk in our rituals, as we just did now, as we process the Torah around the congregation. We walk at a funeral. When our sacred temples were standing in Jerusalem, we walked as we encircled the altar over and over. Now, as a people, if you think about it, we were literally born to walk. I know Bruce had it a different way, but we were born to walk. Our first walk was right as we left Egypt. It's probably our greatest and longest walk because it took us 40 years, kind of a long journey. Couldn't hop in any car to get ahead, and so we just schlepped along. That was a march from slavery to freedom. We took whatever we could carry and stepped right into the wilderness. But we weren't walking aimlessly. We were walking to a goal, to a place. We were walking to Sinai. As the great Boston Orthodox rabbi, theologian, and thinker taught, we weren't only escaping bondage. We were not only walking from something, but as he teaches, more importantly, we were walking to something. We were walking with freedom to receive God's revelation, freedom to embrace the Torah, the mitzvot, the commandments, a vision of justice. If you think about it, that original march, in many ways, has never stopped. For thousands of years, through exile, through return, through persecution and renewal, we have kept walking with Sinai as our lodestar. Every step we take for justice today echoes that original march. And let me just add something for today. That when Jews lose sight of the Torah's core values of justice, as we see tragically unfolding in places like the West Bank, when we step off that sacred path, we are not living up to the ideals of justice we were given thousands of years ago. And it has disastrous consequences. Now, our Torah portion, which, as Rachel said, rocks the most mitzvot of any parsha. David's so excited he's sitting right in the sun with a baseball cap. Has many commandments, and one is a very challenging commandment. Lo tita'ev mitzri. Right? You should not abhor an Egyptian. Now you would say to yourself, whoa. I shouldn't hate an Egyptian after what they did to us? They enslaved us. They beat us. They oppressed us. They drowned our children. How can the Torah tell us not to despise them? Rashi, our great commentator, struggles with this too. He explains, Egypt also offered to find refuge for when our people were in need during the famine. Egypt sustained Jacob's family at that time. And so Rashi explains that even in the times of our the darkest moments, there are glimmers of light. Rabbi Tali Adler of Machon Adar deepens this quote: "We are commanded in this mitzvah, this challenging mitzvah, not to hate the Egyptian, but to remember the past in all of its complexity. Not to forget the suffering we endured, but at the same time, not to allow our memories to become exclusively dark." That's how Sinai is supposed to work. And that's Sinai at work. Instead of bitterness consuming us, the Torah teaches us a different way to look at every moment and every person and to see them with all their complexity, with all of their nuance, and with generosity, even towards someone who harmed us. Now, later in the Parsha, another of the 74 commandments: when you reap the harvest in your field and overlook a sheaf, don't go back to get it. It shall be saved for the stranger, the orphan, and the widow. Always remember that you were a slave in Egypt. And so here again, memory becomes ethics. Memory becomes the way that we can change this moment. Because we knew oppression, we must leave part of our own abundance for those on the margins, for those who are oppressed. Because we once marched from Egypt, we now walk with compassion. As we've learned, this command is one of the most often repeated in the Torah: do not oppress the stranger. Even more than the call to love God, central to our tradition, right in the Shema, we are reminded time and time again to protect the vulnerable. Why? Obviously to help them, but also more deeply, empathy. When you remember our own suffering, and it can soften your heart. The Torah insists that we focus on those people on the margins: the stranger, the orphan, and the widow, the immigrant, the one who's really not part of the mainstream of society. That's the truest test of kindness. Maybe there is a note of self-interest here. If we show up for others, and perhaps when our own moment of need comes, others will show up for us. And so Sinai is still guiding us. When I march today for liberty, for justice, and for the dignity of all, I really feel part of that chain going back thousands of years. Our walks today are not separate from the Exodus. They are in essence a continuation of that same march. The march from Egypt to Sinai wasn't a walk in the park. There were complaints. There was a lot of kvetching. We're good at kvetching. There were setbacks. There was exhaustion. Sometimes the people stumbled. As we read today, sometimes they were attacked, like from the Amalekites. But in the end, they kept moving towards covenant, towards justice, towards a vision larger than themselves. Our marches today also have setbacks. Sometimes we can't make it. Sometimes we pause. Sometimes we're tired. Sometimes we get discouraged. Even me. So sometimes, yes, we need a ride, both literally and more metaphorically. But the point of this is not perfection or endurance. The point is walking together, guided by God's call to build a more just society. Rosie Ruiz was running for herself. And I think as I look around the world, too many people today are running for themselves. But let's make our community different. Let's make our community a model for something different in the world. Let's make our work, our marches, our sponsorship of an immigrant family, as we are doing right now, our gatherings with the GBIO, the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization, like the one we're part of this Wednesday night at Hancock Church, let's make those the efforts that we walk in. Like our journey from Egypt to Sinai, we walk towards our ideals of the Torah. Let us remember that freedom is not just an escape from slavery, but it's a covenantal calling to create justice for those on the margins. And maybe taking a ride during the march is exactly a reminder of what we need, because it reminded me that I can't do this alone, that I needed everyone else with me. That's what I needed to keep going. That's what we need to lift each other up, to pursue this holy work together. May we all keep walking that path and those paths that we are on, carrying Sinai with us, remembering Egypt, and never stopping as we march towards justice. Shabbat Shalom.